Welcome. I am Kristen Parker. I'm the Education and Events Director here at SPAAR. And with me today is Mark Mason, 2022 President of SPAAR. And we're going to pick his brain, his expertise on investing, investments in real estate. I hear you've got a lot of background in that.
I actually got started investing in real estate. That's, before I was even a realtor or a member of the association, started buying rental properties while I was a civil engineer. The 2008 recession kind of ended my civil engineering career, and I dove in headfirst into real estate, and it's been a wild ride ever since, just kind of organically growing.
Awesome. Okay, so what got you started into investing?
Oh, man. Well, my family has a lot of construction background in the trades. My dad was a general contractor for many years. And when I was an engineer, I knew I wanted to invest. So I had saved money. The investment bug got me probably right out of college. And, I bought my first house while I was in college. A lot of people can't say they bought a house when they're 20.
No.
And I house hacked that house. I rented it out to my cousins, so made my mortgage cheaper.
Smart.
It was house hacking before I knew what the term even meant. And then when I became financially able to buy more properties, I had saved up some money and started buying rental properties. And, before I knew what BRRRR meant, I bought properties that needed work, renovated them, kind of pulled some money out and did another one. And so that's how I got started.
Wow. Yeah. Like the golden child of this is how it should be.
Right.
Okay. Do you have any, I'm sure there's lots of horror stories, but some things that you've learned along the way we should talk about?
Oh, well, if you want to go to a horror story to start off with.
Yeah, let's go there.
The very first two properties I bought as an engineer, slaved away. I was working 45 hours a week as an engineer, 20 hours a week, doing all the manual labor myself to get these first two rental properties going. And within the first 3 years, the basements flooded twice. Due to city backups of the sewer, my insurance didn't cover it. So for 4 years of owning my first two properties, I think it took 4 years before I actually turned a cash flow profit with all of the repairs that kept going in.
Oh, man.
But knock on wood, they haven't flooded since, and I still own them today, and they're great cash flowing properties now. So I guess the lesson learned there for anybody listening is real estate is always a long-term play. Mm-hmm. You're going to do well in the long term. And obviously there's other strategies that can be short-term. But when you hang on, it usually works out.
Okay. So that didn't deter you, obviously. You've grown from there.
There were some tough nights, but no.
Okay. So anyone in college or maybe after college age, how do you get started? What's the best way?
Well, house hacking, right? That's what I did. It depends on what you're trying to do, right? There's a couple different ways you can invest in real estate. So I think it's understanding what your goals are. Some people want to earn a higher income, so they're looking at value add properties that they can sell. The advice to that person would probably be, partner with somebody that knows what they're doing, borrow money from friends and family, make a smart decision to, trust a realtor if you're not a realtor on how you can buy a property and sell it a few months later in as shortest time as possible to make some money. If you're the long-term play and you're out of college, you've got a W-2 income, you can get into a property with an FHA loan for 3.5% down. I would maybe tell people to look at rural housing if they could live down in Cannon Falls or Prescott, a 0 down loan. You can house hack that, get into your house for very cheap. And then after 6 months or a year, go buy a different one using the same thing. So, you could move every year or two and then just keep these properties and keep adding them to your portfolio using your W-2 income as a way to qualify for the loans.
Okay. And so just to clarify, house hacking, is there more than one way?
Oh, yeah. So house hacking. Thank you. So backing up, house hacking is really as simple as, you living in a house, but you renting out rooms, hopefully to people you kind of know. But, I did it to people I did it to randoms when I did it. My cousins moved in at first, and then I was like, before Facebook Marketplace, it was Craigslist. Got a room to rent. Who wants to live with me? Do a background check, obviously. Yeah. And, so then you just rent out rooms in your house. If you have if you can buy a 4-bedroom house, you could rent out 2 rooms and keep an office for yourself or something, write that office off as part of a business expense and, bring your cost of owning that home down to as close to 0 as possible. Some people I know back in 2014, 15 were building brand new homes, 5 bedrooms and renting out all 4 of them and making money and living for free.
Wow.
So house hacking is a great way to lower your cost. And also I think the key part of that is it allows you to save more money to get into that next home a little sooner.
So with all your investment properties, do you go for like a management company? Do you do that yourself? What's your advice there?
So there's something to be said about self-managing, right? There's this idea that nobody's going to manage your properties as good as you. And I think that can be true, but if you're not a really good property manager, you should probably hire a property manager because there are things you need to know from a legal perspective, from a timeliness of response. If your job takes you out of commission for 8 hours a day, you're going to want somebody that can respond if there's an emergency type situation. Generally speaking, I think if you're available and you have the knowledge or the know-how or the capacity to manage, I think you can self-manage pretty easily up to 5 to 10 units. And at that point, you either have to bring on help as an employee or maybe hire a property management company to help you grow. Otherwise, you're just going to be spending all of your time managing the properties and not growing your business.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's doing a lot of landlord type
Yes, the tenants and toilets that everybody, the stories, you spend all your time on the stories.
the bad stories. There's never good stories with
Nobody
tenants
tells
and
the good
toilets.
stories.
No.
Yeah. It's not exciting to say, hey, I've had this tenant for 5 years that's paid me rent on time every month.
Right.
Like nobody wants to hear that story. Like they want the juicy, terrible ones.
That's too funny. So you mentioned rural. What do you think about like vacation properties, some of the other types of properties?
So, Airbnb, VRBO is a good way to do short-term rentals. There's a lot more active management required in that. You can make a really good money. You can do an arbitrage scenario where your barrier to entry is a lot lower. If the property owner, and always do it with full disclosure, if the property owner is willing to rent you the property and knows that you want to turn around and rent it out on Airbnb, your cost to enter is really just signing your guarantee on the lease and the cost of furnishing the unit. And then you're actively managing an Airbnb, which can be good. There's a little bit more risk. There's other things that can play into that. I do have one Airbnb rental that I have, but I bought it because I want it long-term. And it's just like, it was a justification thing for me. But I know a lot of people do it really well. I'm not one of them, so I can't tell you exactly how I would structure that business.
Yeah.
But it can be done, and the cost of entry can be lower in that arbitrage scenario. If you're going to buy it and own it yourself, you can still do that, but scaling takes a little bit longer. What was the other thing?
Well, when you say that owning it, you're looking at more long-term wealth then, because that's yours now.
You're getting the principal pay down. Right. You're also getting more of the maintenance and that type of headache that might come with owning it. Whereas if you rented an apartment, some of that stuff you could defer to the landlord, and then you're really focusing your energy on getting that occupancy up and that type of stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm sure there's some benefits to tax, and I know you're not an accountant, a tax professional. So for someone looking at it, do you want to give any insight as to some possible things to know or ask about?
Yeah, and thanks for the disclosure.
Yes, you are not a tax
professional. This is not advice, right? Just some cool things to go Google on your own afterwards to see what you think. Real estate has some of the best tax advantages. So, at the very beginning level, I call it phantom depreciation. I think I learned this in one of the very first real estate courses I ever took when I was getting my real estate license. But you can depreciate the cost of your rental property, not the land, but the buildings, over 27 and a half years. So you could be making money and you get to depreciate the cost of the land and buildings or the improvements. And those land and buildings improvements are also appreciating in value. So it's like one of these tax code things that you just hope never changes, but as long as it's there, you got to utilize it. So if you could be making $8,000 a year on a rental property and get to depreciate $5,000 or $6,000 of that, just kind of throwing numbers out here, but you save a lot of taxes by owning just a single family rental property. And those tax advantages just grow the bigger the project you have. Once you get into some small apartment buildings, you can do cost segregation studies and accelerate a lot of that depreciation in the first couple of years or even the first year and bring your taxable income down to zero. This is what big developers do. This is how major corporations pay very close to zero taxes when they invest in a lot of real estate. And then there's other grants, the state, federal credits, tax incentives, specifically for historic buildings and stuff that you can take advantage of as well. So I think the key is yes, there's tax advantages on every level of investing in real estate. And if you're not utilizing them, you're leaving money on the table. So you have to become smart. You have to find an actual tax advisor that can help you with this, somebody that has experience working with a real estate investor. because they shouldn't just help you after you're done with the year. You should be meeting with them at the beginning of the year or mid-year and say, hey, I want to grow. I want to buy more properties. What should I be looking at? How can I lower my tax obligations? And it's important to note, some people will say, oh, well, you're just not paying tax. Well, you're just deferring the taxes. Because if you ever sell the property, you do have to, you get what's called recapture, which means all those depreciable monies that you didn't pay taxes on, you will have to pay. And that is unless you do a 1031 exchange, which then you can take all of those deferred real estate taxes and push them into the next property you buy and just continue to push that down the road, which is what a lot of lifelong real estate investors do.
So you're kicking that can.
Yeah.
Till later.
Yep.
All right.
And, if you pay it when you die, like, whatever.
Don't have to worry about it at that point. Okay. So should there be any, I'm sure there are red flags. What kind of things should I be aware of if I'm going to start down this path?
Emotions is the number one thing, right? I mean, I think investing is a business decision. It's numbers. It's, yes, it's location. It's income, it's expenses, it's what's the rent growth going to be. When you start letting emotions get in the way of making a business decision, you're probably going to make a poor decision. So I would say removing emotions. You can't say, I want to buy 2 properties this year and feel under the gun to buy 2. If you can't find 2, don't buy the wrong one. Just buy 3 next year. So don't let emotions get in the way of any investment or business decisions. That's probably the biggest one for me. And then choosing your partners wisely, whether it's your contractor you're hiring, vetting them properly. I'm not going to put it out, but I got a photo the other day of somebody that hired a discount contractor to do some foundation work, and their house literally tipped into the hole.
Oh.
And the house, the contractor wasn't insured. So it's like, well, what do you do then? So you have to choose your partners wisely. From your bank, from your investors, if you're using them, to every contractor that does work on the house, vet them. If it's the first time you've used them, check out their work at a different project. Visit that project. Is it clean? Just choose your partners very wisely, and don't let emotions get in the way of any business decisions. You can hold those 2. You're going to remove 90% of the mistakes you could probably make, or the red flags. Yeah.
Good advice. Good advice. Where would I find some money? Everybody watches the TVs of the get rich investment. Don't need any money down. Is that reality?
Well, we just talked about the rural financing loan.
This is true.
I mean, so there it is right there. If it's a house you're going to live in house hack, 0 down.
That's true.
You've got options. They're 30 minutes away from us right here.
Yeah.
Plenty of houses. Where do you get the money?
Yeah.
Well, let's back up.
Where did you get the money in college?
Well, you remember predatory lending?
I do, actually.
So I was a victim of predatory lending. I did an 80-20 loan on a temporary summer internship job, and they gave me a loan for my first house when it was a 9-month term job. And they're like, yeah, sure, we'll borrow you money to buy a house.
No problem.
Luckily I had the wherewithal to withstand. If I hadn't house, I don't know what would happen. Yeah. So what I did, I don't think you can do anymore.
No, I don't think so.
But the rural housing is a deal, 3.5% down, save up some money. Hopefully you can do that. You can borrow down payments from family and friends. Or gift them. You can't borrow, because if it's a loan, they won't count it. So if your parents will gift you money. The other thing I wanted to touch on, you talked about was what did you just say? You said something else besides get rich quick.
Yes.
Yes. You need to remove that from your thought process. Like the get rich quick is I hate that word when it comes to real estate, because real estate is a long-term play.
Yes, it
now, there are short-term value-add projects where, you could flip a house and make 20 grand, but 20 grand isn't going to make you rich, because you're going to pay a bunch of taxes on that, because it's active income. Real estate is a get-rich slow game. It's a snowball effect. You start buying a couple properties, you have really smart financial frugal tendencies, and over the course of 2 or 3 years, you can start growing, and you can start, just expanding your network, buying more properties, and all of a sudden 10 years will go down the road and you'll look back and you'll be like, holy cow. Like, now maybe you're rich, maybe you're wealthy, maybe you've reached your goals, but you're not going to be there in 2 months. And if that's your mentality, you're going to go back to those poor decisions we talked about earlier.
Emotions.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's the thing to keep in mind with investing is this is building your wealth, your retirement wealth, essentially. It's for down the road.
Yeah. And I'm not afraid to tell my tenants that. Like I tell people, this is my retirement. When you move into a house that we renovated, I want you to take care of this house like it's my own because this is my retirement and you're living in it. I don't have a problem telling people that and being personable with them because it's like, I want them to take care of the house and I want to take care of them and I'm going to do quality renovation work to the house and hope they take care of it. But 100%, it's a retirement. It is a long-term play to create passive income so you can go enjoy your life in a way that you want to do.
Any particular price points that you recommend? I mean, it can be all over, I know, but if you're getting started, what do you think I should look at?
I think the number one thing to look at when you're getting started is cash flow because you probably don't have a huge nest egg of money and things do go wrong. Issues happen. Furnace is going to go out. Your tenant's going to break a window and tell you that the broke on its own. And you're going to have to fix that. And if you're paying out of pocket, if you buy a property that doesn't have enough cash flow and you're having to inject money in, you're going to be an unhappy investor. So I have a rule. Everybody has a risk tolerance or an appetite for what they're willing to take on. But, when I look back over years and years of investing, very rarely do I have to put more than, $3,000 to $5,000 into a property during a major repair, furnace, water heater, whatever might happen. And so I like to have a rule that I never have to inject personal money into a property after I buy it. Because if I do, going back to like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, now it's a liability, not an asset. So if my cash flow doesn't create a $3,000 to $5,000 a year on a single family house type scenario, then I'm probably not interested because if a furnace goes out, then I'm negative that year. And I don't ever want to be negative in a given year. Now that doesn't always hold true, but that's the metric that I use. That's kind of my risk tolerance. But a lot of people buy properties on emotions or the hope for appreciation and all these other things. And especially in this market with interest rates rising and everything, you need to have cash flow. Cash flow will cure a lot of your woes. You don't want to have to inject money in. So, the price point, back to your question, I don't think matters so much as the cash flow.
Okay.
So if it's a 4-unit property, and by the way, you can buy a 4-unit property with 3.5% down FHA. That's great. You can rent out 3 units and house hack the unit you're living in if you really wanted to. But the cash flow has to be there to maintain the property because you never want to be in a situation where you can't maintain the property. Your tenants are unhappy. They move out, and now you've got a bigger turnover. So you got to have the cash flow to run the business.
Do you see any negatives or positives with some of the different municipalities and their rent control or rental regulations they're trying to inflict with your investments?
Yeah. Well, when St. Paul has a 3% rent max and your taxes go up 18%, things aren't really relative anymore. And that's scary over the long run because you're going to be stuck with sub-market rents. Hopefully Minneapolis doesn't follow suit with that. That said, it could create some opportunities. So if you're looking to get into investing and there's a property that makes financial sense, it has the cash flow, I wouldn't rule out 100% St. Paul or Minneapolis, but I would definitely go in with the knowledge that you may not get the rent increases that you hope. And if you underwrite for that and you plan for that, you should be okay. But for me, it would just have to be a really good deal to be in those municipalities that are either enforcing or considering enforcing rent control. And I would seek a really good understanding of that. I would be much more amenable to investing where I don't have to worry about that. And the other thing is that kind of follows a similar process with the municipalities is, following the public investment. So if you can invest somewhere where cities or governments are putting a lot of money in over, again, real estate's a long-term wave. If they're redeveloping a certain area of the community and there's all kinds of public dollars going into that area, I would look at buying in that area because you might get more rent growth in that area than an area that's not getting the public infrastructure investment. Now, you're going to not have to be, you want to not be subject to the 3% rent growth to get that. But another thing from the municipality side that some people don't look at.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's really good advice. Yeah. I think when I was renting, I much would have rather been in a place that seemed like it was moving forward than stagnant and kind of dilapidating around me. Yes.
And it's really easy to see that in comprehensive plans. When are streets going to get redone? What are the condition of the streets right now? What do the parks look like in the area? And, what are major firms investing? If there's a brand new Walgreens going up and some real estate conglomerate's building a 200-unit apartment building, and you can buy a piece of property that's within walking distance of all that stuff, you're probably in a better area than an area that's getting nothing. Because all those other people have a lot of very highly paid people evaluating where to invest millions of dollars.
Right.
And if they're spending millions and millions of dollars in this area, it might be better than the area that they're not investing millions and millions of dollars in.
No, that's really great. So it's more than just the one piece of property that you're looking at buying. You really need to kind of take into account the area that you're buying as well.
100%. Yeah.
That's
if
really
you're owning
great
it for the
advice.
long term.
That is really great advice. So when it comes to long term, I lost what question I wanted to ask. You had said something and I forgot what it was.
No worries.
So, yeah, I totally forgot what question I was going to ask.
Well, real estate's a long-term
Yeah.
game, right?
It was just we were talking, that was such a great thing, and then I lost what my other question was.
Well, I've got a piece of information that might be good sharing about the benefits of long-term investing.
Okay, great.
Is if you own a property long-term, let's say you buy a fourplex and you paid $400,000 for it, and in 10 years it's worth $800,000. I'm just making up numbers right now. But in 10 years, you can refinance that property, assuming, let's hope interest rates are a little more amenable then, and you can pull out $200,000, $300,000, whether it's principal pay down that you've gotten back or just the appreciation. And when you take that money out, you're basically re-leveraging the property. You're not earning an income, so that money is tax-free. You don't pay any taxes on it. You go refinance it. They give you a check for $200,000 or $300,000, and you can use that to go buy another property or a boat, but I would suggest another property. And then you can start growing again. So this is, again, where that snowball effect starts coming in. So you've bought these properties, 10 years later, you've got 10, 15 houses. You could 1031 them, you could re-leverage them, and you have all these opportunities available to you, and the tax code helps you grow. Like I think the government knows that we need people to invest in real estate, whether that's building, buying, renovating, growing, because that's a huge influx of private capital into local economies to maintain the housing stock. And that's a good thing. That's why there's these tax benefits, because really the country needs that. So in the long term, the longer you own, the more equity you have, you start getting more options to grow, which is kind of a fun thing. And the whole idea of taking money out, not paying taxes is just fantastic.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. When it comes to knowing your partners, so your bank, your contractor, your realtor, and knowing some of these maybe harder things to navigate with rental restrictions and different things like that, what would be your advice of where do you seek that knowledge or those people?
Sure. So networking, number one, you've got to constantly be networking. There's a few different, local meetup groups and investor associations in the Twin Cities area, which is great. When I got started, I made a lot of phone calls and had a lot of lunch meetings. I think when I decided to start flipping house, I think I met with 15 banks with a little pitch package and everything. Like, hey, I want you to borrow me money. By the way, I'm unemployed. Like, I want to go flip a house.
I can imagine how that went.
Well, 15 banks later, I got two to eventually say, hey, yeah, we trust you. Sounds good. And so we did it. But perseverance. You've got to be networking. You got to put yourself out there. Be presentable. Thinking back, I think the banks I ended up working with said, we get a lot of contractors that just come in here and say, borrow me money. Like, I put together a nice PowerPoint, I printed it off, I had it there, I gave it to them, I said, look, this is what I'm going to do. I had done my 2 rentals, this is their numbers. I left out the flooding basement part. They didn't need to know that, but ended up working with them, and I still work with one of them today. So, the more people you meet, don't be afraid to ask somebody to go to coffee, buy them coffee. In the first 3 or 4 years, I think I bought 4 or 5, 6 different real estate attorneys lunch. Hey, let me buy you lunch. Or, why? Lunch was a lot cheaper than an hour of their time.
Yes.
Right? And so I was like, hey, let's buy lunch. And you talk to these people and you learn stuff. And then eventually you pick somebody you want to work with. So don't always use the first person, vet them out, network. And some of your best connections will come from referrals, like any other business.
Yep. No, that makes sense. So you said there are investor associations?
Yeah, so Minria is a local one. That's kind of geared towards like the flipping, wholesaling market, which it's good. I mean, you go to those things, you can learn a lot. There's people there that will pitch you, I think, different programs to spend money or whatever. I think most of the get rich quick at night stuff that you pay for, you can just find Googling online. So if you're self-motivated, you can learn all that stuff, most of it without having to pay. So I would advise people not to. There's better things I think you could spend your money on as long as you're self-motivated to make this a journey. And then MHA is another Minnesota Multifamily Housing Association. They do some investment related stuff as well.
Okay. And you mentioned, I heard a little bit ago, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Big fan of the book.
Oh yeah. If you haven't read the Purple Book, you got to start with the Purple Book. Did you read it?
I have.
I gave it to you.
I know, I have.
What did you think?
I loved it.
Perfect.
My husband also read it.
Excellent.
Implemented some things right away.
Perfect.
From the introduction pages.
Right.
Yeah, it was great.
I think the biggest thing about that book is, financial literacy is something that's not taught, and it changes the way you think about money, about assets and liabilities, and it really is a great stepping stone for reframing your thought process on, okay, how can I take control of my financial future instead of letting my money control me? And if you haven't read the book, you got to read the book.
It's actually a very easy read. It's not complicated, even though it's about finances.
Yes. Yeah. It was well written, and it challenges your thought process. And I think that's the best thing to do.
Yep. And a reflection inside, internal. So anything else you want to share about your journey or things that somebody should know?
I'm a quote person, and I always think about quotes. I've been leaving them out here, but one that I think is great for somebody that's getting started is sometimes you have to jump out of the airplane and build your parachute on the way down. If you try to plan out your perfect investment or when to get started or look for the perfect house, you're going to be 2, 3, 4 years down the road and still planning. So, kind of set out your goals, your idea, and then just take action. You got to start doing a deal. And sometimes the deals work out really well. Sometimes they don't. So, try to stay within your risk tolerance. But if it's a long-term hold, another great quote is, even if you buy a property today that doesn't turn out quite as good as you hoped, in 10 years, you're going to look like a genius. And, you'll maybe have had some strife between now and then, but,
Staying in your risk tolerance will make it easier to deal with those flooded basements.
Yes. And some insurance companies might cover that, which actually brings me to another selling point when I think about people that want to invest in real estate versus other investment classes. And I think being diversified is okay. You can own stocks and mutual funds and all that other stuff, but real estate is an insurable asset that generates cash flow. If a tornado blows it over, you get a new house.
That's true.
If a business goes out of business and you own a bunch of their stock, you don't get reissued stock of another company that's similar.
You do not.
So, there's a lot of unique benefits with real estate. I mean, you've got the appreciation, the principal pay down, the cash flow, the tax benefits, the insurable asset. There's a lot of things that go there. And maybe the biggest one is leverage. You can buy a $1 million property for $200,000 and you get the appreciation on $1 million. You can have margin trading accounts and do something similar, but then you're 100% at risk. You don't have that insurable asset. So I think for somebody that's dedicated, be a learner every day. Read an article, read a book, do it all the time, but start taking action and, don't let those emotions make your decisions for you.
And Google house hacking.
Yeah, house hacking. Easiest way to get in. Zero down, rural financing loan, house hack.
I like it.
And maybe with that, some people, I talk about the barrier to entry and what type of sacrifice you're willing to make. And I'll say the more sacrifice you make earlier, the more you're going to leap yourself forward faster. If you're willing to house hack, you're going to save up the down payment for the next home a lot quicker. If you're not willing to do that, it's going to take you longer to save up that thing for the next house. Even if it's something as renting out your basement, making a separate entrance or something, the more you're willing to sacrifice, whether that's, cutting out lattes from your, Monday morning routine or sharing a room in your house with somebody, you're going to shotgun yourself forward faster. So be willing to sacrifice more while you're still maybe pushing your comfort zone a little bit.
Oh, excellent. Any last words?
No, thanks for having me.
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah.
Learned a
appreciate
lot.
It. Good. Are you going to go buy a house?
Well, we bought a condo.
Perfect.
In 21.
Okay.
And not big enough to have
House hack.
anybody else with us. It's 2-bedroom, but it's only 12 owners in the whole building.
Okay.
So little building, little association. And so our plan is probably in the next 2 years, we'll be moving up and then renting that out.
Perfect. Brings up one last piece of advice then. If you own or buy property in an association, stay present in the association, get on the board or go to the board meetings, be vocal, because you give up one of your property stick rights in an association, they could change things. They could decide to, we don't want rentals anymore. We don't want short-term rentals or anything. So be a voice. Don't assume nothing's going to change, because then you're going to be on the wrong side of that decision.
Mm-hmm. No, that is excellent advice. But yes, when we bought, it was something on our mind about, okay, we're going to keep this. Does it accept rentals?
Yes.
So, we looked right away.
Yeah.
And yep, they do.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Well, I look forward to. You have to let me know when you buy your next house and rent that out. That'll be
I will.
Rich Dad Poor Dad step number 2.
Yes, it will be. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.